Welcome everybody to AMS webinar or Weather Band webinars or latest webinar. Sorry, Thor's Apprentice, an action adventure about on-demand weather modification with author Bob Russell and moderated by Keith Sider. I'm a little bit flustered because I'm a giant book nerd, and this combines science and action, which is just my thing. So I will calm down though because we got to do this. But yes, I'm excited to bring this to the audience today. Before we begin, though, I would like to address the audience and remind you of some of our guidelines for our webinars. If you do have any questions for Bob or for Keith, please make sure that you put it in the Q&A option at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Otherwise, chats and other comments, go to chats, but we want to make sure that all the questions are concentrated in that one spot so that we don't have to hunt for questions to answer later on. We will also have some specific time for questions from the audience after the presentation, but if there are questions that are appropriate for being answered right on the spot, we'll get to those too. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's moderator. So, Keith, welcome, Keith. Keith has served as an AMS Executive Director for 17 years, stepping down from that position in January 2022, or yes, 2022. Still flustered. He is now a Senior Policy Fellow with the AMS Policy Program and a Distinguished Visiting Lecturer at College of the Holy Cross. And Keith, welcome. And with that, I hand it over to you.
All right. Thanks, Gideon. I'm just super happy to be joined tonight by Bob Russell, who's written this terrific book, Thor's Apprentice. Really looking forward to having about an hour to chat about the book and learn more about the process that Bob went through creating this book, and a little bit about the kind of the change in careers that happened as part of this, which is a bit about what this series has been covering. Where we have been looking at people who have had very successful careers in the meteorological field and then moved into something toward the end of their careers that's a little bit different. And so this is another example of that. A few weeks ago, we had a terrific discussion with Dr. Diane Seidel, who went off to teach kindergarten in Thailand after retiring from her role as a climate scientist. Today, we've got something that's very different than that. And so really looking forward to having an opportunity to have this discussion tonight. So I want to introduce Bob, but I really would like, Bob, for you to introduce yourself. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your career path, what you did for the bulk of your career, and then leading up to what we will be talking about tonight, which is this book.
Sure. Thanks, Keith, and thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and to talk with you. So getting right into it, I got my degree in atmospheric science back in the 1900s, right? In the 1980s specifically, from the University of Missouri, and shortly after went into the Air Force as a weather officer. Ended up liking what I was doing and stayed there for 27 years as an operational meteorologist. Worked a lot of operational and staff assignments throughout my career. Had the privilege of working with both the Air Force and Army Special Operations units in and out for a substantial amount of time. To spend some time on Headquarters Air Force on the air staff and on the joint staff, which was also very interesting and exciting. Had to go to school to continue to advance. Got a few master's degrees along the way to stay competitive throughout my career in the Air Force, and retired as a colonel in 2012. My last operational assignment was as the commander of the Air Force Weather Agency. After I retired from the Air Force, went to work for a very large defense contractor for a couple of years, working on weather programs as a industry person. Found myself working very hard, working very long hours, and pretty much living to work instead of working to live. And after a couple of years of that, I decided to take a hard right turn to avoid my first heart attack before it happened. And my wife and I moved out to Northern California, where she had family, kind of the payback tour, relocated to a slower pace of life. Found myself working in local government, been working for the county we reside in for about the last 8 years. Much slower, more comfortable pace, and that allowed me to spend a little bit of time doing something else that I had never really put any substantial effort into it, although I had put a little bit of effort into it. I'll get more to that later, which was writing. And so that kind of gets us to where we are right now. So this Thor's Apprentice is the first book that I've had published. It's, as you said, it's a story about weather. It's written largely from a weather guy's view. It has weather people as main characters in the book, and hopefully folks, when they read it, will enjoy it. The feedback I've gotten, folks who have read it, has all been fairly positive. So hopefully that continues. I hope people enjoy the work.
Well, that's great. Well, I do want to get into the book, and in particular, some aspects of the book that I think would be great for us to spend some time on. We have to try to kind of a careful line. I'm sure that not everybody who's on the webinar now has read the book. We don't want to give any spoilers for the book, but at the same time, it is an engaging story, and I think we can talk a little bit about kind of the elements of that without doing anything that's going to ruin it for people who haven't read it yet. Can you kind of give us a sense of the outline? Well, maybe not quite that. The sense of the premise that goes into this book to sort of set us up for some additional discussion.
Sure, Keith. Thanks. The premise of the book is that on-demand weather modification, in other words, being able to control the weather, is a fascinating thing to think about until you think that it actually exists, and then it can be really terrifying. And in this book, a scientist, a professor in meteorology who's working on his PhD, comes to possess the ability to modify the weather on demand, and it already exists. He finds it intact and working, and then has to decide what to do with it, and how to approach this thing. And part of the story is a discovery of the actual technology, and then his thought process and evolution as to what a great tool this can be for doing good, and what an amazingly dangerous and damaging tool it could be in the hands of someone out to do bad. And he gets to encounter all of those things along his journey.
Yeah, and that's it is a very compelling storyline as you work through that. I think an element of brilliance in the way that you've crafted this is not ever explaining how the thing works. And I think, as a scientist reading this, I was kind of feeling like, well, how could you do this, and what could happen? And I was I think happy to not have this try to explain something in a way that would have my scientist brain trying to pick it apart and saying, oh, that can't work, that can't work, that can't work. By sort of not explaining how it works, it was much easier, I think, for me to sort of suspend disbelief in that and say, okay, let's accept this premise, and now let's really kind of get into what we would do if that kind of a technology actually existed. So I think that was brilliant of you to do it that way.
Well, I appreciate that. Candidly, that was quite a struggle for me as a writer and a scientist. There's really kind of 2 points, I guess, that I would say about that. If I could explain how it worked, I would have written a different book, right? Yeah. Because it'd be an autobiography, and we'd be in a whole different world. But the second premise, and more importantly to that, is that people have been successful on very small scale in modifying the weather for decades. And so it's not that far a leap to say, especially decades later, right? And with AI as it is, with the advances in science and lasers, energy, all the other types of things that are hard science, things that are tangible, say, if you come across the right combination, why couldn't this happen? And so, yeah, it's really the only part of the book that is a leap in faith, and everything else is easy enough to say, oh yeah, that I can see that happening. I can see that happening.
Yeah, and I say I think that's a great way to move forward on that. There's I don't remember precisely the quote, but I know there was a science fiction writer who I think was Arthur C. Clarke, who said that a great science fiction book is one in which the writer chooses one thing to change, one thing that that kind of defies our current understanding of science, but everything else has to be correct. And I think, and again, this is not a science fiction book in any way at all, but I think that same element holds. That you have sort of this one thing that you need to say, okay, I'm going to accept that this thing that I know we can't do now is possible, but then from that point on, everything sort of unfolds the way you would expect it to unfold in real life, and the way you would expect things to behave, and agencies and individuals to react, all feels very natural from that point on.
I appreciate that. You reminded me of some career advice that I got very, very, very early in my career, and it's essentially what you just said, but in a different way. If you're going to break the rules, only break one rule at a time, because you can probably survive that. And I applied that through my career. I also applied it to my writing.
That makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I think again, without giving away any spoilers, the Air Force gets involved in this adventure, and it was very clear to me that your many years in the Air Force paid off as you were writing this, because I spent a brief period of time early in my career working as a civilian researcher at an Air Force base. As I was reading about some of the characters that you developed, some of the Air Force personnel, I could feel them. I could relate to those to people that I knew at the Air Force base in terms of the way they behaved, the way they viewed things, the kind of interactions they had with each other. All that just felt so authentic to me, and again, it's clear that that's your years of the working in the Air Force coming through, and it felt that way throughout the book. I think also working with some of the other agency folks that sort of get involved in this very incredible technology. There's a real authenticity that comes through with this, which I think is great. Can you maybe give us a sense as you were doing this, how much of this related back to actual experiences you've had or people that you knew? Was that part of the writing process for you?
Very, very much so, and I appreciate you saying that, because I've always heard write what you know, right? Write what you know about. And so the characters, the experiences, it is all fiction, right? Clearly,
absolutely,
fiction. But it's all inspired by people along the way. I mean, the discussions about schools and universities and different characters all have a inspirational person or mix of people together, and some of their qualities and some of the things and experiences from my past that all shaped those versions of the story. So it very much was a part of it, and the less the details about a particular experience, but more the here's how it felt when I was here doing this, or here's how it felt when I was interacting with this agency or that location or that thing, trying to just capture that idea more so than any particular experience or instance or person. It's just that kind of person is the type of person you will encounter here. And these are the types of processes you'll run into. And these are the types of obstacles that you'll find, and the type of challenges or things you'll have to think about when engaging, with these entities. And I try to make a real distinction between the people and the entity, right? Individuals you can trust. Sometimes governments or agencies, not so much, but they're all comprised of people. And those relationships are the things you have to really concentrate on, because that's what will either help you succeed or fail.
Yeah, as I say, it's the story sucks you in, I think, and I think for me at least, it wasn't until I was kind of maybe a few chapters in that I really kind of got fully engaged with the story, and it was kind of at that point that I started to realize this is a much bigger thing than I was thinking about, and so I think a lot of us, I think, kind of like the main, again, not without giving anything away, the main character, I think, thought small when he first had this technology. I mean, it was kind of like, oh, I could do some interesting things with this. And I think it was a little further in that you had this character realize the immensity of what he was dealing with. And I have to say that as I was reading the book, it didn't really, I didn't capture the sense of immensity of this kind of a technology early on either. And so you kind of drew me along to that realization as the character kind of got to that realization. So again, it had a very authentic feel to it, in a sense that I think I similarly would have not grasped the scope of this as quickly as I probably should. So that, again, just an interesting thought process as you were kind of developing this character.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because it means it worked.
Yeah, it did. As I just as I read more, I got more and more engaged, and it got harder and harder to put the book down, because I really was kind of drawn into this story. Can you talk a little bit about your writing process as you're working through this? When did you come up with the idea for this? When did you sort of map out the storyline, all those kinds of things? Is this something that you were thinking about for years and years, or is it something that just sort of you said, well, I ought to write a book, and then you kind of, it blossomed out? How did that work?
Yeah. This is going to be a long answer, but the short answer is both. My first assignment in the Air Force was, like I said, back in the 1900s, and in the base I was at, we had a cold fog dispersion system that was designed to basically open up some holes when we got really dense fog that was persistent for a long time, and it released propane into the atmosphere and allowed this cold fog to deposit out as ice crystals. So as a second lieutenant, I literally sat there and said, you know what? My first job as a weather guy, I'm changing the weather. That's just sick. How cool is that? What's next? What else do I get to do? So I provide that answer because that helps I've had a little time to think about this and let this percolate. Right. There's lots of formalities, treaties, in fact, in place that talk about not doing weather modification for offensive operations. There's a lot of agreements and formal agreements, not to make light of any of this, because it is governed substantially. But we also know that people don't follow the rules all the time. And
Right.
and if someone's out there doing this and advancing this and really kind of having a breakthrough, that was my experience was 35 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long time. Lots changed in 35 years, right? I mean, look,
Mm-hmm.
right. So what could happen, and what if we never thought about it or never really revisited that? What type of advantage or disadvantage would we be at, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of over time helped me think about what to do. But the story itself, I wrote a short story version of this just to get it out of my head, probably 20 years ago. Just put the basics down on paper and said, "Oh, okay, here you go," and then it sat on a shelf for a long time, right? Again, it's all just notes. And a friend of mine contacted me and said, "What do you ever do with that story?" And I said, "It's just sitting on my desk where it's always been for a long time." And said, we need to do something with that. And so that was the impetus to actually resurrect that and do some writing to it and actually put it out and get it published. And kudos and hats off to the folks at Bohannon Hall Press for putting it into something meaningful, and for Amelia Ann Designs for the artwork, the great cover and the artwork through it. It just kind of turned into a team effort. And I had we have a rule, the group of us, is that it has to be fun. If it quits being fun, then we need to stop.
Yeah.
And so far, we're pacing ourselves and keeping it fun.
Okay, so again, not in the sense of spoiling anything, but you've mapped out an epic story here, because and I didn't realize this until I was nearly finished with the book. It doesn't end with this book. So again, you've gone from a short story to something that's going to span 3 books? Is that correct?
Right. Yes, that's the intent. We're working on the follow up to Thor's Apprentice. It's called Thor's Journeyman. Mm-hmm. It'll pick up where this one leaves off, and it did leave you hanging. But if you didn't finish it, you can put it down and call it good there. But if you liked it, there's another one coming. We're doing final edits on Journeyman. And
okay. Well, and again, in the I just want to say the ending of Thor's Apprentice is very satisfying, but still does very much set you up for wanting to know what's next. But again, going back to the writing process, you had a short story. You wanted to expand that. You didn't just expand it to a book. You expanded it to a set of books. And what was that like? I mean, what help me understand, because I don't think my brain works that way. So help me understand how you sort of map out something that now is much grander in scale.
You're not going to like this answer, Keith, but I'm going to give it to you anyway.
Okay.
I wrote Apprentice. I just sat down and wrote it, and I would incrementally, I'd get to a point and I'd go, okay, now what? What would happen here? And so I didn't map out a long storyboard and cut it into thirds.
Okay.
I got to a point in the process where I said, okay, this is where I need to land in this story to be able to, like you said, wrap it up, say, okay, you got this far. Mm-hmm. And then I started on, okay, well, what would he do next?
Yeah, okay.
So I'm literally solving the problem as I go and writing it down and showing my work. It's just a math problem, just like if I was taking a calculus test, which I didn't like, but this I do like, right?
Okay.
So I'm making up for it.
Well, I don't know if that makes me happy or sad to hear that you sort of haven't mapped this all the way out. Although I have a feeling, uh, well, certainly the way this unfolds, it unfolds again, kind of very authentically as a main character that's discovering this thing and then having things just happen, and kind of moving that story forward in a way that that feels like he doesn't know what's going to go next. And as a reader, you sort of feel the same thing. And so in some sense, if you had mapped this out too completely, it might have felt a little bit more like you should like you knew the ending before you got there. I'm maybe not saying this super well, but it does sort of have this real sense that you're sort of tumbling along uh, with things kind of moving of their own momentum.
Well, and that is kind of how I wrote it, and I think I wrote it that way because that's how it happens in real life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And again, that gives that sense of authenticity that you don't you're not foreshadowing what's going to happen. It's almost like as you're writing it, it feels like as you're writing it, you don't know what's going to happen either. That you're almost recording it as it occurs rather than having figured out where you're going to land.
Yeah. And that's really kind of the life is what happens to you when you're making
Yeah.
plans. And
Yeah.
as a professional military officer, you plan everything. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You plan it, you replan it, and you hope it goes the right way, but you hope for the best, plan for the worst, and expect the most
Yeah.
likely. It kind of stays in those
Yep.
lanes. I will say though that um, there are some foreshadowings both in Apprentice and Journeyman's Done, right? And there's some foreshadowing there too, and it does it does take you in and out. If you look close, you'll see some things after the fact.
Okay.
They'll make sense
Yeah.
if you catch them, but it 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 does hope to keep you engaged and
Yeah.
keep you thinking forward. What would I do
Mm-hmm.
in this case?
Yeah. Yeah, that's yeah. I say that's a fascinating part of this as I was reading through is sort of, and again, as I was reading it, I knew we would be talking, and so I maybe have been reading this a little differently than I might have read a book when I didn't know that I was going to talk to the author later on. But it really, they say that the sense of kind of being pulled along in the story was an interesting one for me. So, yeah, and again, kind of getting back to the process here, this kind of a writing style is certainly dramatically different than things you would have done professionally. Um, did you uh, did you work with some other people, or are there, if somebody who's listening now would like to go out and write a novel, what kind of advice would you give them?
All bad advice, but it would go something like this. What what I did, I just wrote it.
Okay.
My It was in my head and it needed to get out, and the only way for it to get out was through my fingers onto my keyboard. And get I think my advice would be get the story out, get the bones out, get what you want to say, then go back through it and take another run at it and clean it up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then go
Yep.
through it again and decide what you don't like about it and fix it. And then
Mm-hmm.
go through it again. It's an iterative process for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think it's a creative process. Let it be creative. If you let it or want it to be technical, it's going to sound technical. It's going to be
Mm-hmm.
technical, and that's not a story,
Mm-hmm.
right? So tell the story, and then make it look like you want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're exactly right. Past experience, 30 years, it's technical writing, or it's writing for information, it's writing for a briefing, it's to make a decision, to decide what to do, to go someplace and pick when and where and how to go, or what is the forecast and what's the impact. Those are thoughtful, technical things that require a very specific communication style for a very specific purpose.
Yeah.
This isn't. This is fun. Just go have fun with it and write a story, right?
Okay.
If you're writing a journal article, don't follow my advice. If you're writing
That's right.
action adventure, that's fiction that you want to engage people and keep them reading it and hope they enjoy it and entertain it, just tell a story. Tell your story. Get it out. Everybody's got a story. Write it down. If they like it, great. If they don't like it, that's great too. At the end of the day, you feel good about it because you created something that wasn't there. That's your work. This is my work. I hope you enjoy it. If you don't, I'm still going to drink a beer later and smile. Wish you did. Maybe you'll like the next one, right?
Yeah. No, that all sounds terrific. And as I think it's there's a level of inspiration, I think, for all of us as when we're further along in our careers. Not saying at the end of careers, because that sounds like too much of a finality. But as we're getting further along and we're trying to think, are there some things we want to be doing? Are there some things that are different? It's wonderful to see people like you who have taken that kind of hard right turn to do something terrifically different than the career path, and have fun with it, and still be able to build upon all those experiences that you've had. So it's kind of, it connects to the career, but also is something that gives you a different kind of an outlet. So that's just, I think that's an inspiration for all of us to try to do something fun, and something that can be enjoyed by others. Just makes it that much more fun, I think.
Well, that's what I think too, and you put it very well. Just have fun with it. Life's too short.
Well, I do want to make sure people know that we'd be happy to have questions from the folks that are listening in. So put those in the Q&A section if you have them. I have just a few more things that I thought we could talk about as we wait to see if there's any questions coming in. And one is when you are reading, because I'm guessing you must have read a lot of books that are of this sort of general style, sort of the action adventure sort of thing. That has to be something you enjoy doing. So when you're reading a book, are there authors that you like? Are there styles that you like, or what kinds of things really kind of capture your imagination that may have helped you as you were working on this book?
Most of the books I've read in recent past have been nonfiction.
Oh, okay.
And earlier in my younger years, I was a big Tom Clancy fan.
Yeah.
Back in the day, those
Yep.
kinds of things he's one that I look up to and read a lot of his works, and that's a good inspiration, if we're going to use the word inspiration. And I think as I read, what I try and do is appreciate that author's style or their ability to make their point, because there's so many different ways to do it, right?
Yeah.
Some people are good storytellers, some people are fact driven, some people start in the middle and push you out to both sides, some people start at the beginning, work at the end, some people start at the end and then tell you how they got there, right? And and so when you're doing some stories within a story, which we have in Thor's Apprentice, with the characters, we kind of go to different scenes of where they are. Trying to weave that together, I find is particularly challenging. So I look to how other people do that. How do you tell that story in a context of what else is happening elsewhere at the same time? That's a gift. People are much better at that than I am.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So we do have a question that came in from Johnny Reed, and it says, he says, many of us know you actually lived a real adventure. He says, R2 Maddox, mad respect. Did you have any significant sticking points while writing? And if so, how did you push through them?
Thanks for the question, JR. I had some sticking points in the storyline, and pushing through them was basically deciding what would be the outcome that'll make me think the most, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or what'll make the reader think the most, because at the end of the story, Thor's Apprentice is really just a discussion about good versus evil, right? And what's going to win out? The good guys always win until they don't, right? And so that's the part of pushing through. It's like, okay, can't stop here, but I got to pause and decide, break left, break right. So in our previous parlance, we would call that branches and sequels. So I would, just have to think through, if I go this way, what does it look like? If I go that way, what does it look like? Which do I like the best, and which kind of gets us in the cardinal direction of where we're going? And quite candidly, very insightful to the question. It's just the same thing you do if you're out doing stuff. It's the same process. It's just this time I'm writing.
Okay, well, that's great. So that's a terrific answer, and a terrific way to think about that, I think. We have another question from Rip Coleman. Says, Thor's Apprentice does end on a cliffhanger. I'm anxious to see how you will continue the story and glad to hear Thor's journeyman will follow. How can you keep it up for 3 volumes?
So volume 2 is already done. Volume 3, I'm in about chapter 5, and I will wrap it up in volume 3, which is already titled. It's Thor's Craftsman. So the apprentice, journeyman, craftsman.
Okay, that's great. Yeah.
Sequence, and it's a good question. How will I wrap it up? Because once this technology is out there, right, and you can control the weather, and multiple people can control the weather, who wins, right? Who's got the biggest controller of the weather, right? And the time element of that becomes substantial. And so, without giving too much away, you struggle with the problem in Apprentice, and you think about it, and in Journeyman, you struggle with the implementation of that. And I'll kind of leave it at that. In Craftsman, you get to see the results of those struggles.
Okay. Well, boy, what a great sales job for the next 2 books. I'm very much looking forward to both of those. I'm glad that Journeyman will be coming out relatively soon, because I don't want to wait too long to sort of continue this story. We have a very personal one, which I want to read because it warms my heart, from Catherine Bulmer. Says, not a question, but just wanted to hop on and say how proud I am of my father. Can't wait to read the next one, and love you. So so thank you, Catherine, for doing that. As a dad, it means a lot to all of us who are dads when that kind of stuff happens. So thank you for doing that. Bob Davenport just popped in and says, great work, Bob. Do you have plans to start on a new topic after you complete volume 3?
If it's still fun and there's still beer, yes.
Okay. Well, I can almost count on the beer part, but
I'm hopeful. For those of, I want to make sure I explain that. Keith and I, when we first met, we said this should be just like we're 2 friends having a beer. Right?
Yeah.
So far, I think it is, and the answer to Mr. Davenport's question is probably, but I haven't picked a topic yet. I'm still working on this one.
I have a very good friend who wrote a textbook, who said the textbook was a labor of love, and he never wanted to do another one.
Yeah.
And so I'm really happy to see that this is a labor of love that makes you want to do more, and that's a wonderful place to be, I think. So,
I agree.
well, I wanted to again, we don't have any other questions that have come in quite yet, but I wanted to talk a little bit more. Um, when you were looking for a publisher, when you were, kind of in that stage of I've got this idea, there's a book here. Uh, how do I do that? I'm not sure I would know what to do next. So how did you navigate that space of getting from having the idea and even something that that looked like a good manuscript to having something that's actually published and out and ready for people to read?
So that's a great question, and I'm going to be the again the not good example. In my experience, networking is certainly an important part of that, right? And knowing people and talking. In this case, a friend of mine, a colleague for a long time, who does publishing, reached out to me.
Oh, okay.
And said, "Hey, I'm looking for my next project. How about your story?" And so, in fact, the dedication in Apprentice speaks exactly to that.
Okay.
Without without the good folks at Bohannon Hall Press, this would still be a couple of computer disks and a stack of papers on my desk. So I wish I could give some help to the aspiring writers, but the first step is really just to write something and get it in a format that is a good story or a good manuscript or a good text or something that you can get in front of people. Because no matter what you do, whether you're being contacted or you're contacting, right, it has to be a worthy work for someone to pursue.
Well, that's great. It's and that's for people who are earlier in our careers. That's not bad advice as well. That's sort of embedded in that. I think for very many of us, the successes we have come through the networks that we have developed. And often it feels almost accidental as it progresses. But I think for people who are earlier in their careers, don't underestimate what can happen because of people that you meet, people you get to know, even if they have no connection to you in terms of your sort of professional career early in your careers. That kind of serendipitous opportunity that comes along to talk to people and kind of get to know them, it's not that uncommon for that to loop back sometimes many years later in ways that are really productive.
You're absolutely right. The older I get, the smaller the world gets.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I think that happens within our professional careers, and especially in a profession as small as meteorology. It's not unusual for someone that you knew earlier in your career and lose track of to reappear 2 decades later in a completely different role in a completely different way. But that can happen in all these other ways too. And so it's nice to hear that it was your network that kind of helped move you in this direction, because as I say, that's I think something that happens more frequently than people realize.
It does, and if you recognize that, then it gives you a little bit of an advantage, because it really is about relationships and people. And having a military background, a lot of my friends are previous military, and we might not see each other for 10 years. And when you run into them, You pick up just where you were 10 years ago. You catch up and you move on. It's about that, that bond or that relationship, not so much the time. I have found, though, that the best measure of time is other people's children, right? Because when you say your son is where? Doing what? Holy cow.
That's
I remember when he was, third grade doing this. And that's not the case. So, yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we don't get older, but our children do.
Yeah.
So, no, that's a great point. We don't have any more questions coming in. You have actually covered everything that I was hoping for us to talk about tonight.
Sorry, Keith, there is a question from Elizabeth Russell and a comment for Bob from Johnny Reed.
Oh, where am I not seeing that?
On the Q&As, I think.
Oh, I did. I'm sorry. I was not scrolling down. Oh, hold on then. Okay.
Sure.
So from Elizabeth, she asks, how did you come up with these characters?
So the characters, first of all, had to be integral to the story, right? There's not a lot of characters that are just, flitting in and out, but each character is based on either somebody who I have had experiences with, or is built of a bunch of people who make up a specific character. But they're inspired by people I know. Some are great, some aren't so great. But at the end of the day, right, they're all inspired by people I've encountered along the way, or they're traits of people I've encountered along the way. And I'm going to explain that just a little bit further. There are several characters in that book that are inspired by one individual, and that individual is the core of that character, but not that character at all, right? They're all hybrids, but some of them have, positional, some of them have personal, some of them have a combination of all of them. But the traits that make up those characters are all from personal experience.
Yeah, that's great. And I was saying earlier on, there were so many times when I was reading about someone that it reminded me of somebody that I know or that I knew at some time. And again, I think that's a sense of capturing that spirit correctly and that sort of authenticity. The other comment that we have from Johnny Reed says, great presentation, really enjoyed it. Everyone in the GBA is proud of you, brother. Anxious to see the next 2 volumes. And then it says Airborne with an exclamation point. So
I appreciate it. GBA is the Gray Beret Association, and that's comprised of. So I'll take a minute to explain what that is, if you don't mind.
Sure.
It's airborne weather NCOs and officers, whether they work with conventional Army or Army Special Operations units or some conventional Air Force units. But the Gray Beret is the Air Force common in attire for airborne weather professionals, and we have an association that I belong to, and so does JR. In fact, if you'll notice on the background behind me, Thor's Apprentice is flat gray. The whole cover is gray, and that's close to the color of the beret that I spent a lot of time wearing, and it was inspired by that. So that's the gray. That's the connection there. So there's lots of little things like that are kind of the insider things for the book and for the artwork and things like that. So
that's terrific. Yeah, that's terrific to know that, and thank you for drawing all the rest of us in who didn't know that to be able to share that story for us. Okay, let's see. Another question here from Aaron Robertson. I'm curious if any career experience has inspired the events of the book, and if maybe you can share some. I haven't read it yet, but I'm looking forward to
it. So the short answer to that question is yes. There's I had the privilege of, going to a lot of places and doing a lot of stuff, and some of those experiences just kind of inform the processes and the Keith, as you mentioned earlier on the discussion, it feels like this is someplace you could be. Okay, this is someplace that you could be, in some of the feeling, if you will, or the components or the parts of the book talk, is kind of what I draw on past experiences to be able to bring that in a fictitious context to be able to make you feel that way. Again, about, okay, yep, this is believable. It's not, it's not made up, but it's certainly made up.
No, I know what you mean. I understand that. That's a great answer for that.
If I could,
sure.
It's kind of a corollary. I see we have just a couple minutes, but the Thor's hammer, which is on the cover of the book, is the name that was given to the specific device that Professor McCloud comes to possess. And so he inherited that, and that name, and it has significance through the book, and a lot of the symbology is a mix that's on the hammer, is a mix of weather symbols, right? Because a lot of your notations are that way, and also some of the Norse runes kind of combined together, so it blends those things together. Kind of ties into the experience question, because there is some of that thread where you just get given something and you got to figure out what to do with it, and it has real significance in your life, but it's not something you did or you earned. It's just something you happen to inherit, be that an experience or a name or whatever the case might be. And so that is a bit of the inspiration to the Thor's hammer. And the Thor's Apprentice, just for those who haven't, if you haven't read it, to give you a little bit, it goes fairly deep into the book. You got to get past page 200 to when the significant character in the book gives Professor McCloud that moniker of, well, you must be Thor's apprentice then if you have Thor's hammer. So that is a little bit inspired by a real event.
Yeah. Oh, no kidding. Okay. Well, that's great to hear. That's I have a feeling there's probably a much deeper story there.
There is, and that's a beer story. We'll have to do elsewhere.
Well, maybe sometime we will actually be together in person, and I can buy you that beer and hear that story. That would be wonderful.
I look forward to that.
All right. Well, I do want to wrap things up. We do want to make sure we're wrapped up in no more than an hour, but we're coming up to that time. I want to thank you again, Bob, for first for writing this book. So that's my first thank you. The second thank you is for joining us this evening to talk about it, to share your experience. And also to sort of be an inspiration for folks who are thinking about what are they going to do as their career in meteorology or one of the other professions that we cover kind of starts to get closer to the end. What do you do next? And I just I love your sense of finding ways to do something that's fun and to have fun with it. And I think, as I say, the sense of inspiration that I get from seeing what you have done is really pretty wonderful. So thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you, Keith, and thank Gideon behind the scenes for doing all the technical work. And
yes, exactly. Yeah.
So
Gideon, do you need to close us out here?
Yeah, just really briefly, Keith, thank you very much. And Bob, thank you so much. I know my book's in the mail, and I can't wait for it to get here. I'm eager to be introduced to a whole new world. Like you're saying, when you mentioned Tom Clancy, that's the grandfather that started it all for me for this action science kind of thing. And so yeah, I really am excited to get my eyeballs on this. So thank you very much. And yes, Keith, yeah, both Keith and Bob, thank you for taking the time and making the effort and being here for us, for our audience, for AMS Weather Band, and for our audience members. Please remember that all Weather Band webinars will be available at amsweatherband.org. This will be available as soon as I get done with all the processing, so maybe not until later tonight / early tomorrow, but it will be there, and it is available for review for our members, but after 3 months, it'll be open to the public. So be aware of that. If anybody has any further questions or wants to talk about the webinar, you are always welcome to join us in our community and bring it up and see what else is there to offer. Once I get done with the book, I'll look forward to dipping in there too and seeing what everybody else thinks, because I'm super excited. But yes, again, Bob and Keith, thank you so much, gentlemen, for taking the time. And yes, take care, audience. Take care, everybody. And we will see you at our next AMS Weather Band webinar event.